Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and how they have the most talented roster in the NFC East heading into the 2022 NFL season. But before we hop into the content of today's video, if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you guys do enjoy it. We're on the road to 3,000 subscribers, so if you guys are new, be sure to hit that button. But with all that being said, let's hop into the video about the Philadelphia Eagles and their supremely talented roster. Now, before we get into the exact moves they made this offseason to improve the roster from 2021, I want to talk about the Eagles season last year, which many people view as a pretty successful season, considering the expectations for the team prior to the year and all of the new changes they had in their front office as far as their coaching staff goes, and a pretty young quarterback leading the team. The Eagles finished 9-8, second in the NFC East, a few games behind the Dallas Cowboys, who had a pretty good year last year, but despite not winning the division, the Eagles were still able to make the playoffs. They gained the number 7 seed and they played against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it wasn't a very competitive matchup. The Bucks did win the game 31-15, but getting valuable experience for the young players that are going to be the catalyst for the success for the Eagles going into the future. It's a pretty important year and a good step in the right direction for the Eagles. I don't think anybody saw the Eagles going into Tampa Bay and winning that game. It was just kind of about getting some experience, knowing what it's like to be in the playoffs, what it takes to get there. And I definitely think the Eagles learned that last year on what it takes to be a playoff team and gathered good playoff experience. A big reason for their success last season was their new head coach, Nick Sirianni, who was the ex-Colts offensive coordinator. Now, when they did hire him, the Eagles got a lot of flack for hiring somebody that nobody really knew a lot about. People thought that there were more experienced and better coaches out there than Sirianni, and the Eagles really got a lot of hate for bringing in a young coach. Sirianni did a fantastic job with the Eagles last year. He made them the best rushing team in the NFL. Hurts took a step in his development, and we'll talk about him a little bit later in the video, and he rallied the Eagles to a playoff appearance, which was a great rebound from their turmoil that they had a year prior with the Doug Peterson and the Carson Wentz saga. He fixed the offense, and he also brought some consistency to the locker room, and that definitely helped the Eagles in 2021. The next step for Coach Sirianni now is continuing that success into another year and building off of what he did last year. Problem that many young coaches have is they have a successful year and then they never really reach that height again. So I'm really going to be looking for how Sirianni gets the Eagles ready to go, especially with their improved roster heading into the year. But now that we've kind of reviewed their season last year and what they were able to accomplish, I want to talk about their free agency and their draft and how they vastly improved their roster this offseason and have a real good shot to win the NFC East this season. For starters, we're going to talk about free agency because that is the first thing that happens in the NFL offseason. And the Eagles were pretty quiet overall. They didn't make a ton of moves early on in free agency. Their biggest pickup early on was Hassan Reddick. They brought him home. He went to college at Temple. He's from the Pennsylvania area, but the Eagles signed him to a 3-year, $45 million contract, and Reddick has kind of had a career resurgence. Early in his career with the Cardinals, he was often injured, didn't produce very much, but his last couple years with Arizona and then with the Panthers last year, he's had pretty good years back to back, and I think the Eagles definitely rewarded him for that, and he's going to go in and help out that pass rush that's already pretty solid. After the acquisition of Reddick, the Eagles really focused on bringing in some veterans just to help bring them some depth and re-signing many of their own players. It wasn't until about a month ago when the Eagles brought in James Bradberry from the Giants, who just recently got cut, and it was a fantastic signing. The ex-Pro Bowl player signed a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Eagles. Now he will line up opposite of Darius Slay, and the Eagles have 2 premier cornerbacks now, which sometimes last year their secondary was a problem, giving up too many big plays. Now you add in James Bradberry, and that should definitely fix some of those issues that they had at the back end of their defense. And now we can get into the draft, which was really the biggest part of the Eagles offseason, considering who they brought in during their first round. To open up the draft, one of the biggest storylines and things that happened during all 3 days of the draft was when the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown, the star wide receiver from the Tennessee Titans. The Eagles gave up the 18th pick and the 101st pick to get the star wide receiver, and now they compare him with Devontae Smith, who had a great rookie season, and Quez Watkins, who's one of the better slot receivers in the NFL. The problem the Eagles had last year is they didn't have a true X wide receiver. They didn't have a guy that could consistently win one-on-one against some of the best cornerbacks in the league. So now that they have A.J. Brown, he can kind of take some of the pressure off of Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins, and he kind of opens things up for the rest of the players on the team. After the trade was finalized, they signed Brown to a 4-year, $100 million contract with $57 million guaranteed. But the Eagles were not done in the first round. They then went and got Jordan Davis, defensive lineman from Georgia, an absolute beast in the middle of the defense. 340 pounds. He's going to pair very nice with Fletcher Cox if they end up playing right next to each other. And even when Fletcher ends up retiring in a couple years, Jordan Davis will be able to take the reins from him and kind of continue on that successful defensive tackle that the Eagles have had for the past decade. And that same mindset that I just mentioned about kind of replacing Fletcher Cox down the road, the Eagles did a similar thing in the second round when they drafted Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. He's seen to be the Jason Kelce replacement. Kelce's getting up there in age and he's going to be retiring very soon. So now you have a guy in Cam Jurgens who can step in, learn from Jason Kelce, develop into a very good player, and there you go, you have two vital replacements on either side of your line. And that's how good front offices build good teams. They draft young players in important positions and can learn from proven and star players like Kelce and Cox and then take over for them once they retire. The Eagles' offensive line was ranked 4th by Pro Football Focus last year, so they had a ridiculous offensive line. And then we'll also get Isaac Seumalo back at right guard. He missed 14 games last year, so the Eagles had to put in Jack Driscoll, who did a fairly good job, but they are going to be getting back the right guard this year. And then in the third round, the Eagles got what many see as the steal of the draft when they got Nakobe Dean out of Georgia, pairing him with his teammate Jordan Davis. Dean fell due to a lot of medical concerns and kind of being undersized for an NFL linebacker. But when you have a player of Dean's talent and what he was able to do at the collegiate level, when a first-round talent like Dean falls, a special player like Dean falls, all the way to the third round, you take a flyer on him. That's exactly what the Eagles did. And I'm really going to be interested to see if those concerns were really real about Dean, which the Eagles have already come out and said that he should be ready to go by training camp. He should be fine to play in the season. So if he doesn't miss any time and he goes out on the field for the Eagles and contributes, it's really going to turn out to be a huge pick, and he could turn out to be one of the leaders of that defense. I think all the moves the Eagles made this offseason were really good, but it all comes down to one player, and that is Jalen Hurts. I think the season really rides on him. If the Eagles can win the division, if they can win a playoff game, I all think it rides on Hurts this season. Last year for the Eagles, Hurts completed 61% of his passes for 3,144 yards, 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and he also added in 10 touchdowns on the ground and near 800 yards. So he had a fairly good season when you combine all of his numbers together. I still think Hurts needs to kind of develop as a passer a little bit. I think it's kind of a similar situation to Lamar earlier in his career. If you kind of take away Hurts' mobility in the pocket, which is definitely easier said than done, he kind of struggles to sit in the pocket consistently and deliver accurate passes over and over again. I think he kind of needs to work on that, and it sounds like he has this offseason, and it should be better this year. Nick Sirianni said, Jalen is, in my opinion, is more comfortable in this offense. And that's just a part of the process the second year. He knows where the receivers are going to be versus different looks. He knows where to go with the football a little bit quicker. And we've done our job as coaches, and I don't want to say we've done a good job, but what we've done as coaches is figured out what he likes and what he's good at and all these different things. It's about accumulating those reps. So it sounds like he's getting some positive reviews in OTAs, and that's always a good sign for a young quarterback as we head into the season and get into training camp. But as far as the NFC East as a whole, I still don't think the Giants are ready to compete yet. They have a new coach. They still have Daniel Jones at the helm. I think the Giants are still a few years away. I still think they're kind of a rebuilding team with a new GM and new coach now. The Commanders could be a little bit interesting. They now have Carson Wentz, who's kind of jumped from team to team to team the last couple years. I think their defense is solid, but they do have a lot of young players on offense that are going to have to contribute right away. I think the Commanders could be interesting, but I don't think that they are a runner for winning this division quite yet. It's really between the Eagles and the Cowboys, and when I look at the Cowboys offseason and how many players they lost, like Amari Cooper, La'el Collins, Randy Gregory, and so on and so forth, they lost a handful of pretty good players that contributed a lot for them last year. And if you look at the Eagles, who didn't lose anybody important and then brought in a whole boatload of talent, the Eagles definitely got a lot better and the Cowboys got worse, and that gap definitely closed. And I would also like to add that the NFC East has not had a repeat champion for 17 straight seasons, which is just mind-blowing. I've seen this stat the last few years, and it just keeps building and building, and it gets crazier every single year when there's not a repeat champion. So adding in my superstition about a no repeat champion for 17 straight years, and also the improvement of the Eagles roster, I really do believe that they have a good chance to win the NFC East. Currently, Vegas has their odds a little bit below the Cowboys. The Cowboys are at plus 125 and the Eagles are at plus 175. So if you are a betting person, I think the Eagles may be some good value for you. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you guys did enjoy it. Let me know what you guys think of the Eagles and if they're going to win the NFC East this year, or if you think they need a couple years to kind of get these young players into the mold of things. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.